Hey guys, what's going on? Paul here. Welcome back to another Cardano video. And today I'm joined by Lars and Marvin to talk all about Genius Yield. It is one of the latest DEXs to launch on Cardano. Lots of you might be familiar with Lars from his work with Plutus and teaching within IOG. And he's been on the channel here before to talk about Genius. I will put a link to that interview down below, which goes a lot more into what Genius is and what it's going to be. In this one, we're going to talk about the launch, how it went. I think get into talking about the open source router or the smart order routers that anybody can run and some of the stuff that Genius is going to be bringing down the line. Lars, Marvin, thanks very much for joining me. It's great to have you on.
Thank you very much, Paul.
So I'll let you go first, introduce yourself in case anyone here isn't familiar, just because Lars was on before, and then we're going to kind of get into what Genius is and how the launch went for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Marvin. I am the CSO at Genius Yield, and so I work very closely with Lars and the dev team, and developing the protocol and kind of like designing all the current features and the future features that we're going to introduce in the DEX. I'm also the co-founder of Maestro, which is a Web3 infrastructure provider for Cardano, which you may have heard is being used by a lot of projects across the ecosystem to power their dApps.
Yep, us included at Data Markets have started to use some of Maestro, a lot of useful tools for any developers. I would say definitely go and check that out. And maybe sometime we could have a chat more in depth about what's going on there too. Lars, for yourself, do you want to give the brief introduction to yourself and then maybe a high level of what Genius actually is for anyone who mightn't have heard of it yet?
Okay, sure. So I'm Lars. I am the director of education of IOG, the company that built Cardano, basically. And as you already alluded to, one of the things I did for IOG was teaching Plutus in this Plutus Pioneer program. And so I've always been for IOG like on the theory side and teaching side. And then when Genius Yield started, I was excited to join as a co-founder and CTO because it gave me the opportunity to basically try and practice what I've been teaching for so long. So since 2.5 years now, been CTO of Genius Yield and helping it. And I mean, it's supposed to be, first of all, the DEX, and the emphasis is on trying to make use of all the unique features of Cardano. So not just copy things that work well on other blockchains to Cardano, but play to the Cardano strength. So in particular, that means decided against an AMA DEX, and it's order book based. And eventually, I mean, the genius in Genius Yield is from eventually, once the DEX is fine, we want to do like AI powered features like intelligent yield optimization and so on. But we've always said that first we concentrate on the DEX because otherwise there's nothing to optimize. And we're very excited that now in December we launched our DEX, so that's live now.
Yeah, don't think I said at the start, but congratulations on the launch. And might get into the yield side of things in a few minutes. But just on the launch, how did the launch go for you guys? Did it go as planned? Or I always like to ask projects this question because it can help other developers that are building out there as well for their expectations and how things go. Like you say, with the education, it's great to be able to actually jump into the field and get hands-on with it as well. Sometimes it gives a different perspective. So from you guys, how did the launch go for you?
Yeah, I can take this one. So yeah, we went through the extensive process of first, internal testnets, and then public testnets, and then going to the mainnet. And I think that's worked well for us. Is really, and if that's any recommendation I can give, is to do a lot of testnets runs, both private testnets and public testnets, to really test all your functionalities and iron out the kinks, and also kind of push your system at a higher throughput that you could not achieve, right, with doing it internally. And so then when we felt that was in a good place, then we were able to kind of flip the switch and push to mainnet. And we had no issue on mainnet in terms of functionality, and also in terms of scaling. We're able to handle the volume and the trade that were coming through. I would say maybe the only thing that we're now still working on is, adding more liquidity to specific pools. And that's especially important for order book DEX, because a market order can only be achieved if there is liquidity on the order book. But at launch, we made sure that 2 of our pools, Gens and Gens X, had enough liquidity, and so we're able to achieve consistent liquidity on those pools till this day because of our market maker bots, which at that point had not been released publicly and were running in the background, kind of fueling the order book in the background to keep those pools running. And so with that regards, that worked really well, and we're able to process and fill everyone's orders. But we can talk more in details later how that's possible. But the goal is then to bring those market maker kind of bots to other pools and kind of bring that same experience that we had with the Gens pool to the rest of the DEX.
Okay, yeah, I think what you touched on there, multiple test nets, that's important too, to get end users of different experience to test, because I know sometimes from internal testing, you have a set way, or not you, but generally developers will have a set way of pressing the right buttons to test something. But when you put an end user in there, they're not going to follow the step-by-step guide and press this one and then this one. So it's always good to let others in and see, can they break it before an official launch. Liquidity, that's always the question with DEXs. You touched on it there. What are you doing looking to try and pull in liquidity? The DEX space on Cardano is a busy space. There's lots of competition, but is there anything in the pipeline to try and help with liquidity?
Yes. So, I mean, there's a lot of things to say about that. I mean, first of all, Marvin already mentioned these market maker bots. So, I mean, we have these smart order routers that are used to match orders. So if you have 2 limit orders, like the other way around, I mean, 1 sell order, 1 buy order, where the prices match or more, I mean 2 or more, then it's the job of the SORs to match them, to fill both of them. So that's basically what drives everything. And we have open sourced the SORs a couple of months ago now, and some people I think are already running them. So I mean, we are running some, but other people as well. And the SORs, all they do is fill orders. So they look for opportunities for small arbitrage. If they find orders that match, they fill them, and then the creators of the orders get what they asked for. But they only fill orders. So in order to get liquidity on the DEX, especially at launch, we created a small variation of these smart order routers. So it's more or less the same technology. I mean, you need a bot that interacts with the DEX. But in contrast to the smart order routers that only fill existing orders, the job of the market maker bots is to place orders or cancel them again. And as Marvin said, when at launch, we hadn't open sourced them yet, so we only ran our own. But shortly after, I think in the same week still, or 1 week after, forgot, we also open sourced the market maker bots, so everybody can now run those as well. So that's one way to attract liquidity. So if people feel capable of doing something like that, are interested in playing with strategies and coming up with their own strategies, they can run such bots to put liquidity on the DEX. Of course, there are also other ways. I mean, one of the things we are very proud of is that we are so open and permissionless. So, for example, it's also, I mean, we're already talking to DEX Hunter, for example, that wants to integrate with us. So anybody in principle can interact with us and integrate with us, which hopefully also brings some liquidity from other sources to our DEX. Mm-hmm. And finally, I mean, maybe we can talk about that later. We also plan to start a yield farming program for a couple of months to incentivize people to provide liquidity. So there are like lots of irons in the fire.
That's good to hear. Yeah, there's a few different things there. We might come on to the yield farming and stuff in a few minutes, but just on the type of bots that the community can run. And sometimes when people hear bots, they think of a bad thing, but bots are a part of crypto trading. There's good and bad ones out there, and the types of ones that you have are vital for the DEX, or for any DEX really. So on the smart order routers, anybody can come in. You don't need a license, or you don't need some systems are closed and you need a license to run the batcher in other systems. But with your smart order router, anybody can run it. What is the technical requirements? Is there a simple way for people to run it, or do you have to have some Linux or coding experience?
Yeah, and to that point, I think this is kind of like a significant achievement as a proof of concept. You know, a lot of people on Cardano believe that you could not run a DEX without a batcher. And so we kind of people thought that the paradigm was that we had to kind of centralize trades through a batcher, which brings, you know, obviously centralization. It made the DEX less permissionless, and obviously introduced, you know, potential issues. And so I think the fact that we're able to launch and have no issue handling orders through a completely decentralized, you know, system from the get-go, I think for us it's like it's sending a signal that we can build DEXs that don't have batchers. And the nice thing is users don't pay batchers either, right? So batcher fees are gone. You just pay for your trades, and batchers will make revenue on their own, right? So they are looking for arbitrage opportunities, basically a spread between the bid and the ask. And then by filling those orders, they pay themselves. And so that also removes this fee and brings more efficiency to the DEX architecture that we want to push on Cardano. And it also brings more efficiency in the capital efficiency, because bots will fight for the orders that have the higher spread. That means it will have a natural tendency for the order book where the spread will reduce. And that basically brings more price stability, but also more capital efficiency, where you don't have price that moves all across the line. So I just wanted to point out that conceptually, it aligns with, like, you know, financial fundamentals of being capital efficient and price stability, but also it's in line with, like, a truly decentralized DEX that anyone can run those SORs, and using the UTX architecture, it works. You can scale that way. And regarding of, like, how easy it is to do, so right now I believe it's a Docker image, a Docker container that you can just download and deploy. So that requires quite minimum effort, and then you can just run them. The nice thing is you don't need to fund those bots as well, right? So those bots are, like Lars mentioned, are only filling orders. They're only finding arbitrage. So it's not just also easy to deploy, but it's also, like, accessible for anyone. You don't need to be, you know, to have money to fund those bots. It could still be done better and kind of, like, easier to deploy. So that's what we're working on. We're just continuing to, like, bring some automation and make it easier and easier for people to deploy. And since it's open source, you know, the community is contributing, is helping, you know, either creating tutorials or workshops, or improving the code base to make it easier. So it's nice to see, you know, a lot of people now running SORs and kind of helping each other running SORs, a bit like the stake pool community, you know, helping new stake pool operators come in and start their first stake pool.
Yeah, Docker definitely is a great solution. I hadn't seen that yet, that there is the Docker for anybody who isn't familiar. It's fair if you have a step-by-step guide using Docker. It really handles a lot of the setup, and it's nearly like running an application on Windows, in that everything runs inside that application rather than you having to install prerequisites or anything like that. And the market bots, actually, you also mentioned the workshops. I think you've done some official workshops. I will leave links to them down below if anyone wants to check them out and see step-by-step how to actually run them themselves. And at some point, I'll try and get my own tutorials out there too. But on the market, or the market maker bots, will they be similar? Are they available now, or is that something that's coming for the community?
No, they have been available since December already. So I think it was not even a week after we launched that we open sourced those. In principle, it's the same that Marvin said for the SOR. So there's also a Docker image. So in principle, it's very similar. And also, I mean, you don't need, like, a very beefy machine or anything, neither for the SOR nor for the market maker bots. And you mentioned workshops. So I think last year still, before Christmas, I did a workshop on SORs. And just now this week, I did a workshop on market maker bots, and that's also on YouTube available. So it's relatively easy to get started. I should say, however, that I mean, for the SORs, it's not critical. I mean, first of all, there is no risk, and I mean, they're just, of course, you can be smart there as well. So we expect people to implement different strategies, but I think it's maybe not as critical. But for the market maker bots, obviously, the strategy is very important. I mean, as I said, what it does is it places orders. So it looks at the order book and then decides to place buy and sell orders at certain prices. And of course, that's very important that to get that right. And you need know what you're doing. And at the moment, I mean, we have a strategy in our open source version that works, and that there's a config file, so it's easy to just change some numbers and modify the strategy. But of course, we expect that people that really take that seriously will want to implement their own strategies eventually, not just like change some parameters in a file. And that's possible, of course. It's open source, so you can do that right now. But we wrote it in Haskell, like most of our backend software. And of course, Haskell is not everybody's cup of tea, but we already have plans to decouple that so that we provide a nice, generic API. You can use whatever language you like Python or TypeScript to write these bot strategies. I mean, that latter part is not yet ready, but we hope to get that very soon, and then continuously make it easier and easier to do these things.
Okay, yeah, I think once it's available to more devs, it'll really help bring in. It's a hard one. It's like you need liquidity there to attract more people in to use the bots, but using the bots is what's going to help bring in more liquidity. So it's a hard one to try and push it. And once you get over a certain point, then it all gets a lot easier. It attracts more people in, which brings more liquidity and everything like that. And the other one that you mentioned there was yield farming. I haven't seen anything on that yet, but yield farming, most people who've been in DeFi will be familiar with it, in that in an AMM DEX, actually, just in case people aren't familiar, you guys do have market orders, but you're predominantly an order book DEX. In an AMM DEX, if you're providing liquidity, then you have to put in both assets. So there's two sides to the pool, and it keeps getting balanced. That's how the price is worked out. When someone trades in one asset for the other one, that changes the balance, which changes the price. But there can be inefficiencies there, and that's where some people really like the order book style instead. With the providing liquidity, because you can have impermanent loss, then the incentive for people to get involved and take that risk is yield farming, which is generally the DEX token. For you guys that don't need liquidity pools, how is the yield farming going to work there?
I think Marvin should answer that. So I just wanted to, before I forget, because you mentioned these two tokens that you need to put in the AMM pool. Yep. I just wanted to mention for the market maker bots. I mean, on the one side, they are more, not as easy to deal with as with an AMM pool where you just push one button. But on the other side, on the plus side, things like that are completely flexible in our approach. For example, you could run a market maker bot with just one token and not the other one. Then obviously the bot can only in the beginning only place, let's say, buy or no sell orders, but that's perfectly fine. And then once some trades happen, then it gets the other token. And so it's always, a lot of things in life are trade-offs. So also in this case, so it may be, the learning curve might be steeper, but it's much more flexible. This bot can be much more adaptable and flexible than a pool, which is completely deterministic. It can't do anything. You put your money there and forget about it. The bot, you can do all sorts of things, including starting with one token and not the other. Sorry, I just wanted to say that before we switch
I think it's a very important point, and maybe I'll expand on that as well, is you can think of market makers as replacing the pools, right? We don't have pools, but we have market makers, and you can see them as playing a similar role. The problem with pools is that basically it's as if you have a market maker where the strategy is fixed, which is, like you say, you place two sides of the trade, and then as the price changes, you basically sell the more expensive token, and you start accumulating the one that's depreciating in value. And that's what we call impermanent loss. But it's just a strategy, right? The pool has kind of this baked-in strategy that every liquidity providers have to obey by. And so it's very restrictive, right? Imagine you're a liquidity provider that want to provide liquidity but have a different strategy, right? The MM model doesn't allow you to have that flexibility. So you can think of market makers as almost creating like virtual pools, right? You are now able to provide liquidity at an arbitrary strategy. And so, for example, like Uniswap V3 tried to achieve that by doing like concentrate liquidity, right? They understood that not every LPs want to place their liquidity across all the price range. So they introduced V3, where you can place liquidity at very specific prices. And that's exactly what our market maker can do, right? It can place orders, buy and sell orders at very specific prices, but it's even more flexible than Uniswap V3. It's basically what you would see in traditional markets, in traditional exchanges, where you can, make sure that you always sell at a higher price than you buy. And so now you're kind of you're selling and buying the both tokens, but you make sure that you always sell higher than you buy. So then you grow the amount of liquidity that you have over time. And so you don't necessarily actually need yield farming, right? Because if you use the right market making strategy, you can actually grow your liquidity that way. But it requires much more knowledge about how to place liquidity, how to manage it. And so that's where the bots are kind of the building blocks for that, for at first professional traders that know market making strategies and just want to implement them, and then eventually we'll build more and more kind of abstractions and baked in strategies so that anyone can kind of run those strategies and without having a deep understanding, right, of everything. Regarding so yield farming, so yes, but because we don't have pools, right, we have to find ways to reward people that are basically providing liquidity, but or just trading. And from the perspective of the blockchain, a market maker and a regular user on the app are indistinguishable, right? So a market maker is simply just a user that is placing liquidity based on some strategy. But from our perspective, it looks exactly the same, whether you place an order from the app or the market maker. So what we're going to do is we're going to track every order that is placed and filled, and that will count towards your yield farming. And so for every user, we'll kind of keep a counter of all the volume that they created on the DEX, and then convert that into an ADA reward that they were able to withdraw from our application. And so whether you're a user or you're running a bot, right, you will get rewards, and that will be accounted for. And then we have kind of like this two-tier system, two-tier system, where we'll have extra rewards for the people that are more like power users that achieve a certain volume per week. And so that was a way to kind of incentivize potentially, more market makers or just people that are like heavy traders. And so more details will be given, like I think in the next couple of days of exactly what those two-tier, what are the thresholds for these two tiers and like what kind of yield you can expect. But conceptually, that's how it will be.
Okay. I'll leave a link whenever all the details come out. It might even come out before this video. I'll leave a link to all the details down below. But just on that, when you talk about the yield farming and placing orders, is it only for placing orders, or is it when you place an order and that gets fulfilled by someone else? Is that when you earn? I suppose there has to be something there to stop bots. Otherwise, bots could keep opening limit orders and closing them again. So is it really to incentivize liquidity in around that buy price or whatever the market price is? Is that where users get rewarded?
Yes, so it will have to be executed orders that been matched on the DEX, and not just someone placing an order and canceling it.
Okay, nice. And did I hear you say the reward will be in ADA rather than the gens, or
gens? It will be in gens.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I would say, normally yield farming is, maybe I picked it up wrong. Normally it's in the DEX token. But what's next? So for Genius Yield, I know I think we mentioned earlier on about yield aggregators are on the roadmap somewhere, or what's coming next for Genius over the next few months?
I mean, I think one important thing is really with these bots to make that more accessible for people. I mean, right now, even though we have these Docker images, as I said, I mean, ideally you know some Haskell, especially if you want to implement your own market making strategies or SOR strategies. And so we will try to make that more and more accessible over the coming weeks and months, so that ideally in the end, I mean, everybody that is interested in trading but doesn't have much experience with like Haskell in particular or running bots can just think of the strategy and implement it in Python or whatever, and maybe even create some sort of marketplace for these strategies where people can showcase their strategies, and maybe you can like use somebody else's, and I mean lots of possibilities, or that you can just run it in a browser, that you don't even have to install anything, that bot runs directly in your browser. So things like that are definitely important. But of course we also want to over time add more features to the DEX itself. One feature that's coming soon is what we call multi-fill, so it just makes the market orders more powerful. At the moment, our market orders only fill one existing limit order on the DEX. So multi-fill means that it can fill more than one at the same time. I mean, if you have a large market order and the best available order on the DEX in the order book is smaller, then at the moment I think it won't work, or you get a bad price, so that you can like fill several first
Okay,
best
so
prices.
that would be part fill. So if I want to spend 1,000 data, but the first few orders can only fill, say, 500, then it would have to keep going down the order book until it finds something, one UTXO or one order that can fill.
Yes.
I think that's important for the end user as well, in case they don't look at slippage and they just press the order and they end up with way down the order book. So things like that are important. And is that something that's coming soon, or is that in the longer?
Yes, it's always dangerous to promise dates, but I think I can be confident in saying that it will come soon. So hopefully, like very soon, a matter of a few weeks. I think, I hope. And then of course we have more ambitious goals. I mean, like more order type, stop loss, something like that, or options. So I personally would love to do options. So yeah, so in that direction definitely as well, that we have more order types.
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about options in the last call we done. We only touched on it towards the end, but that's more longer term roadmap, is it? Things like options.
Yes, I mean, of course, it always depends. There's always a trade-off. I mean, do you want to do something like the UI is super fancy, everything can scale to millions of trades, or do you just want to like show what's possible, even if it's a bit rough on the edges? So I mean, in principle, for options, the smart contract has been ready for almost a year now. So in principle, we could have something in that regard very soon, which would then maybe not be perfect UI wise, but it would work. So that's always like questions we have to answer. What level of UI polishing is needed and so on. But yeah, in principle, there are some things we could do fast. Others, of course, take longer.
Okay, and yield aggregation, that's part of the roadmap too, is it?
So I would say moving towards kind of what we call like the smart liquidity vaults. So I think we talked about that in the original paper of using, AI algorithms to automate strategies. And so you can think of this bot framework that we're building is the foundation of what will be the smart liquidity vault. As we kind of decouple the bot so that people can use any language to build strategies, we want to create kind of a marketplace of strategies that people can kind of swap in and swap out of those bots. And then you can see that at that point, then we can use, for example, Python, which is kind of the main language used for AI and deep learning algorithms. We can then plug in, AI frameworks and kind of generate different AI strategies. And so that would be great for us to then provide a choice for people to choose different types of what we call the smart liquidity vaults, which would just be AI strategies that are baked into our market maker framework. But the goal is to not us only generate those strategies, but allow the community to create their own smart liquidity vaults, right? And contribute themselves a strategy and kind of let the decentralization of this DEX to create competition between people, so that the best strategies can kind of bubble up to the top, and encourage people to contribute to these things. Because at that point, those advanced strategies it's more about financial literacy and expertise than being like a technical programmer and know about UTXOs. If we can get to a point where we can have a quant or someone that has deep understanding of building transactions and kind of use that framework to then design their own strategies and then make it available, for the community to copy and execute. And so that's kind of like why we're spending so much time, building this framework, is because they are kind of the building blocks of a grander vision of allowing, people to build community-based, strategies.
Yeah, I think, me personally, anyway, it's a really interesting area, from down to the years creating strategies on MT4 and then for Forex trading, and then on to TradingView and being able to create the strategies in there and things like that. It's a deep rabbit hole that you can get into. I know Lars mentioned there, maybe even marketplaces and things like that in the future. It's definitely something that could be expanded on. And just final question on the market bots. Do I have to set it up against one pair, or can I set it up and specify that one bot can cover a few pairs, or is it one bot per pair?
At the moment, in the first implementation that's now open source, it's one pair. So if you want several pairs, you would have to start several instances of this. But I mean, there's no deeper reason for that. It was just the easiest to start it with. So that's a restriction that we can easily lift. But at the moment, right now, if you download it, it would only be one pair.
Okay, and the final one I have, and then I'll leave it open to anything I might have missed. It's good for the community, you think? The contracts you have, they are all Plutus V2. There's a big push in the community now to make sure and try and get dApps to push towards V2, but I think yours are all V2 already, are they?
Yes, they are. Yes.
Okay, great. I think that's the main topics I wanted to cover, but is there anything? It's always good having two guests, because sometimes you can think of stuff that I forget to ask and I only remember off camera, but anything you think would have been good to include in this for people looking to learn more on Genius, or what the future holds for it? Oh, actually, sorry, one thing, the staking. So Genius staking, we only touched on that for a second. Generally, these are the things I think of when I turn it off, but there is 20% of the fees goes to Genius staking, isn't it? Do you want to just mention how that works?
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple, actually. All our fees go to one address. That's like a parameter. And so everybody can see what's there. And we just committed to taking 20% of whatever we collect in fees and splitting it among stakers, basically proportional to their stake. One interesting thing in that regard, I believe that's also quite unique, is that, because of the way our fees work, so there's for each order you place, there's, for example, a flat fee in ADA, but there's also a proportional fee in the offer token. So if I sell gens, there's a small fee in gens. If I sell whatever Hosky, then there's a small fee in Hosky, which means at this fee address that we have a whole conglomerate of tokens has accumulated already. And we split all of them. We were briefly debating whether we should first exchange it for something, but then we decided it's better for everyone and also more fun maybe if we just keep the token as they are, and we just 20% of every token and distribute that. And incidentally, this tier 2 that Marvin mentioned for the power traders of our yield farming initiative, that will take and then probably also take something from the fees. So we said earlier the reward will be in gens, but for this tier 2 we're actually planning to also use our fees. So it will also be this bag of tokens. And we haven't distributed anything yet, but it started when we launched the DEX. So even though we haven't the distribution, we didn't get the distribution mechanism in place yet, but that will hopefully also come very soon, probably latest February. And then we will be able to do these distributions, and everything will count from from the day we launched the DEX. So all the fees we have been accumulating now are already part of this, and 20% of those will be given to the community, to the stakers.
Okay, I like that concept of being able to pick up other tokens. I think it's a great way to get people interested in other projects too, that if someone owns a certain token or they're given a certain token, then there's a good chance they're going to look a bit more into it and try and figure out what it is, or if they want to keep holding it. And with that process, do people have to stake for certain amounts of time, or is it like Cardano where the staking is open, and on that then will they have to claim the rewards themselves, or are they dropped to their wallet? And that's me done with questions then.
I mean, we haven't finalized that completely yet, but the way it looks like now, you don't have to stake the whole time. So I mean, as I said, not finalized, but I am in favor of doing it proportional. So if somebody stakes 1,000 gens for a month, then that should count the same as if somebody else stakes 2,000 gens for half the month. So something like that. But I mean, the details still have to be worked out, but that's like the vision. And the second question, oh yeah, probably people will have to claim, because it's just not sustainable for us to, I mean, as you know, there's this min deposit. So even if somebody's share is tiny, you always have to pay this 1.2 ADA or something at least for every single payment we do. So there will be a claiming mechanism similar for the user experience as our existing stake rewards claiming. So people will just see how much rewards have accumulated, and then they can basically push a button, sign a transaction, and get the rewards.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to go about it, because even chain congestion, like if you're firing out hundreds or thousands of transactions every week or something like that, when someone's happy to let them accumulate for a few weeks, then there's no point doing it. But Marvin, I'll hand it over to you for any closing thoughts or anything that should have been included here that I didn't think of.
Yeah, I think we covered everything. Maybe I'll just finish on a final note that yeah, I just encourage people to try out the bots and kind of run them for themselves. You know, the vision of Genius Yield is that it's extremely open, and it's meant to be driven and kind of like operated by the community. So we see ourselves more like building a platform, building a protocol, but we're not the center of this DEX, right? The cool thing that you're able to do with the DEX is really what the community comes up with, all these market maker bots, and kind of create, you know, interesting order book dynamics, and able to price in, you know, market conditions, and really kind of like mirror what you find in traditional market, which is very decentralized. Those exchanges have a lot of different, you know, liquidity providers that are kind of battling out different predictions on how the price will move, and the order book really allows for, you know, really showing the true market dynamics at hand, and how the bid and the ask price kind of interact, and that's a decentralized kind of price discovery. And so we really invite the community to kind of see it that way, that it's through their participation that the DEX kind of will come alive from its own, as opposed to kind of us trying to kind of reel in everything and try to kind of steer the ship. I think you have the opportunity to steer the growth and the evolution of the DEX yourself. So yeah, try it out and have fun with it.
Great. And Lars, same, if there's any closing thoughts you have or anything that we have missed. I think we covered a lot in this.
Yes, I don't think we missed anything. So I just agree with Marvin that I just invite anyone to try it. I mean, I know I've been waiting for, I think one of the reasons I joined Genius Yield is because I have been dreaming of something exactly like this for years now, ever since Plutus came up first. I think it's just so cool that you can, just by knowing a bit of programming, you can do these things. So you don't need licenses, you don't need whatever. I mean, there's no big hurdle. I mean, like in traditional finance, I couldn't just start market making, I suppose, the New York Stock Exchange. I mean, I don't know, but I assume it would be difficult. I find it exciting that you can get involved with these things and think of strategies and play with that. And everything is open source, permissionless. So yeah, I hope that people will have fun with this. And like Marvin, I invite everyone to give it a go. And if somebody tries to give it a go and is shocked how like technically challenging it is, then I encourage everyone to come again in 2 months or so, because it will continually become easier.
Yeah, look, thanks very much for your time today. I do appreciate it. Hopefully it's given the community more of an insight into what's going on with Genius Yield and what's to come over the next few months, and I suppose years too, with some of the stuff we talked about. I will leave links to everything we talked about down below. I think the tutorials on the bots, how people can set them up, I need to put that down. The yield farming that will be coming soon as well as your socials. I'll leave all of that down below. Anyone interested, make sure you check them out. If you're new here, do subscribe. I put out a lot of different Cardano content. Leave comments, questions, or anything below, and maybe we'll do a follow-up in another 1-2 months, something like that, and see where things stand then. So Marvin, Lars, thanks again for your time, and we'll chat soon. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Cheers,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.